Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by Nate Weitzer. He's on the East Coast. And we're looking at play-up props here on night 2 of NBA regular season action. Also have a best bets video up. We're bringing both episodes to you every single weekday this season. So make sure to subscribe to that page and continue to follow along. Nate, let's go ahead and jump right into your first NBA play-up prop, the finisher.
Yeah, Lauri Markkanen for the Jazz at home after locking up that extension, saying he wants to be here. And look, I'll go over 30.5 points and rebounds. The points sitting 7 lower, but I think he's good for about 8 to 10 boards in what we expect to be a fast-paced matchup with Memphis. Now that they got Ja back, you touched on some of this stuff in the game video, why you like the over. They play much faster. Then you'll have much more rebounding opportunities. But really, the scoring is what I'm thinking more because on the other end, we have no Jaren Jackson. So we have Santi Aldama and Zach Edey starting at the front court. Brandon Clark may be good for 20 minutes or so. He's still, working his way back from the Achilles. And Memphis would be wise to play him on Markkanen because I can't picture either of those guys doing anything to slow him down. Like Zach Edey, you might want to look at Rookie of the Year futures after this game. If in his first game, he literally plays 16 minutes, you might want to look at unders for him in this first game because I don't see how he stays on the floor against Markkanen and John Collins, who are just so much quicker than this dude, especially Markkanen with that baseline move, the finisher, as you called him, should have no problem scoring. He is, like the Jazz offense, a home road splits guy and against Memphis, he's had success even when they had dudes like Steven Adams and Triple J in there. He's averaged 24 and 9 in 5 since joining the Jazz. Insanely good splits. He's gotten to these numbers with some blowouts on either side, 54 and 44%. He's a plus 33, under 30 minutes in 2 of the last 3 games, like I said. So yeah, like I said, it's plus 3, kind of like the home dog here, if anything, because Utah is a team that strikes me as they start hot and then they pull the plug eventually. That's what we've seen the last couple of years, but I like them in their opener here. One of the best home crowds in the league.
Yeah, that's totally understandable. And this dude, minus 2.5 is kind of stinky. It's almost like, why is this only 2.5 for a team that we consider better? Jaren Jackson Jr. out. The Jazz actually had a positive point differential at home last season. Just crazy how much better they are there and how much they just look like a different team on the road. For Lowry, get in while you can, because I don't know, who knows what's going to happen down the road with this Jazz team. It's the last 2 seasons they've won too many games early in the year and then sort of had to tank on even more aggressively to make sure that they didn't get into the play-in and stuff like that. So this is the time to take Lowry for sure. Then we'll see what happens with this team moving forward. But I'm going to kick it off with a bet that is so heavily based on price that you really need to make sure that you're getting it. But Miles Turner under 1.5 threes made is plus 140 on BetMGM. So I would play this down to about plus 125 if that's the best number that you can get. But I think it's still good there. And what we're saying here is I see this as a coin flip, yet we're getting so much better than 50-50 odds. I got a sprinkle on it. This is a plus EV bet over time, without question, in my opinion. You look at Miles Turner just in a vacuum. He was at 1.6 made threes on 4.4 attempts. But as all of my math nerds know out there, the median is probably much more important here than the average so that we can get rid of the outlier games where he hit 7 threes or whatever, right? And this is not a team that you do that against in Detroit, which I'll talk about real quick. But more importantly, I love that for him. If you look at him against the Pistons and you put him at about 4 per game, right? 4 threes per game. You're telling me I get plus 140 to bet that he's not going to shoot 50% from 3 in this game. As I said, over time, I'm going to take that every single time. So I love that number here. Like I said, when you look at Detroit, you add in the fact that that's also working heavily in our favor. First of all, the matchup against Detroit. He hit 0.5 threes per game in 4 games versus them last season on 3 attempts. Love him to not make 2 on 3 attempts. I'll put it that way. And that was Monty Williams' high pressure defense. They allowed the 7th fewest threes made, the 5th fewest attempts overall. They're definitely a bit more of a funnel to the basket, where I think they were hoping Jalen Duren would be a big shot blocker and able to take on that responsibility. Still super young. I think he just legally became allowed to buy alcohol. So let's give him some time to mature into an actual rim protector. But Cleveland's coming in, or JB Bickerstaff's coming in and coached Cleveland last year, who was also a top 10 3-point defense. So they're going to play similar, which also Evan Mobley, Jared Allen on your back line. You're going to feel comfortable pressing up on threes. That's going to be the case with this Detroit team, who's going to surprise some people, in my opinion. And, just looking at the center position specifically, they also were fifth best at limiting centers threes. Not always the most, helpful stat, because centers for the most part aren't shooting that many threes. Although in today's NBA, I would argue that they are, but they do bring they bring Jalen Duren out. They bring whoever they need to put out on Miles Turner, maybe even switch it up with like Tobias Harris on him for a little bit. So they have options and weapons to throw at him. And I love this at the price that we get.
Yeah, I mean, talk about a stinky line though with the Pacers at the key number of 5 in Detroit. Yeah, nobody bet the Pacers here, but you had Nembhard in here originally at 10.5 points, and
they'll like it.
You just said like there weren't any numbers to back it up other than Nembhard's better than this line.
Yeah.
So
I like it. No, I didn't take it away. We each get 2 bets per episode here. So I love the Miles Turner one for the money, but I'm gonna be betting Andrew Nembhard over 10.5.
Yeah,
points,
just wanted to throw that out there for the people.
Thank you.
If you don't want to risk it with Miles Turner, who could launch more threes than expected, that seems like a nice conservative play. Is Nembhard 10.5 points? Josh also likes. So I'm going to go with the Clippers again. In the game video, this is another over we like. And if they're going to get anywhere near the Suns in this debut, they're going to need James Harden and Norman Powell to score the basketball. So you can get even money for James to get 20 points and Norman Powell to get 15 points. I think that's about as conservative as we want to go here. That's 2 or 3 points below their core prop, but I'm comfortable taking the over on either prop. Because as we know, Kawhi Leonard is not going to be playing. Paul George has been traded. So, I mean, these guys are the focal points of the offense. And specifically James Harden, the heliocentric point. He averaged 21 and 10 assists without PG. 6 games last season. His usage rate jumped 6% without Kawhi in 11 games. And this is a situation where it's just very clearly like those guys aren't coming back anytime soon. I mean, obviously Paul George is not coming back, not on the team. But yeah, it's your time to shine, James. It's your world. He's a guy who usually comes out strong in the opener because he just like plays ball all summer, right? And he's not rusty, and he just seems to have that body type where he can go at any point. And he's had some success against the Suns defense, which I mean, I like the over because I don't think the Suns have much of a defense, but their offense should be much, much better under Budenholzer. So, I mean, in 2, not very competitive games with both Kawhi and PG out there, he averaged 20 and 10. Only took 21 total field goal attempts in those January games against the Suns. And then Powell, 2 years ago, he averaged 20 without Paul George in the lineup. Last year, 31% usage when those 2 guys were not out, scored 20 plus in a third of his games so far in 2 seasons without those guys in LA. So, I mean, for him to get 20 plus, then you're talking about a big plus money here. And I mean, there's things you can add, but like, I just trust those guys to at least get their floor in terms of scoring to keep the Clippers competitive here.
Yeah, nobody really came in to take the Norm Powell role minutes sort of participation in the offense. No one's taking that from Norm Powell this season. Look, I mean, Norm Powell, there's a reason that he's a fringe. I'm not even calling him a star. What's below a star? A fringe dude, like a dude. You know what I mean? Like that, you're like, okay, this is a dude I can put in and rely on night in, night out. He's close to it. He's just never quite gotten there. Yeah, sure. 100%. So, but if he steps up and does like be the number 2 at this point, because I don't think that we're going to see that from Terrence Mann anymore in his career. I think we know what he is at this point. He might look like he's 20 years old, but he's like 27, 28. So I think Norm Powell is the better play to go alongside Harden. And look, Harden's pumped, man. He used Luka as an example. He's like, see, Luka got to the finals and Luka plays. And it was like, I'm not even going to go down that path, but you're not a Luka fan. But either way, he's still good enough in this matchup. I would agree with what he's going to face here, whether it's Tyus. I mean, he's not going to get Tyus Jones on him, maybe some Brad Beal, but I think he'll have some pretty good matchups. So I'm going to close it out with a player on the Heat that, I mean, the real Triple J is what I was calling him last year, but then Jaren Jackson Jr. kind of stepped up. Either way, Jaime Jaquez Jr. of the Miami Heat, over 7.5 points. I mean, this is not necessarily disrespectful. I think what we're getting here is value on the fact that Nikola Jovic was named the starter. There was a lot made in the last couple of weeks when Spo named the starters with Jovic in there alongside Bam and Hero and Jimmy and Rozier. He was basically saying, like, we're going to start with the offense, but like, do we not all think that Jaime Jaquez Jr. is going to play more minutes than Nikola Jovic throughout the season? It would have to be a huge left turn from what happened last year, where you had Jaime Jaquez coming in being super solid and Jovic being so erratic that like it was tough to really like keep him in there for solid minutes per game. If you look at projections for him already, there's none on Establish the Run, but RotoWire is already saying 27 minutes for Jaime, 23 minutes for Jovic, and I think that's fair. I think you put Jaime between 25 and 30 minutes consistently this season, and I love him to get over 7.5 points with that number. First of all, he played 28 minutes per game last season, averaged nearly 12 points per game in 28 minutes. So he's going to be right at that number for minutes in this one. If you filter things and make it so that you see what happens when he played 25 to 30 minutes, which is, like I said, the range that I see for him, he still went over 7.5 points in 14 of 22 games, averaging better than 9 points per game. You can even get a 6.5 hanging around. I still believe it's there for Jaime Jaquez on the points, by the way, which I should have mentioned that popped up late last night. So 6.5 is an even better edge for sure. You look at him with Jimmy. I was talking about that in the game video where I was talking about Terry Rozier, where you really have to make sure you're knowing who played for the Miami Heat when you look at past numbers for players, because there's going to be guys coming in and out of the lineup that really impact things. And he's going to have Jimmy and Hero in this game, but whatever. When he played with Jimmy, who is the dude that takes his stuff, he does sort of the Jimmy role when Butler's not in there. But even with Butler, 10 of 16 games, he went over the 7.5 points, and 11 of 16 over the 6.5 points. Also likes playing Orlando, who if you're going to give one matchup for him, it's going to be him being at least forgotten about. I don't think he's going to have a better matchup if he has a guy like Franz or Paolo, more likely, who ends up guarding him when he's on the floor with the second unit. But he still averaged 14 points per game against this team in 3 games last year in his first year, went over in all 3. 2 of them without Jimmy, 1 of them with Jimmy. I just think 6.5 or 7.5 points is way too low, regardless of if you think his usage is going to drop, which it will with all the stars on the floor for Miami.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, it's the value that Jovic is going to start, and maybe there's perception out there that the Heat need to go big against the Magic, right? And so that Jovic would get more minutes, but I don't think that's the case. I think Jaquez is very solid defensively and could do a fine job on Franz Wagner if that's what he winds up doing. And then on the other end, like, he presents more problems for a Magic team that is a bit slower on that end. So, yeah, I think he'll play plenty, and I think he knows how to fit in alongside Jimmy Butler, maybe a little more in year 2, because we saw it got a little redundant when they were both out there. But yeah, I mean, 8 points, he doesn't need to be taking on a high usage role to get that.
Right. Yeah, because if you put him at 8 field goal attempts in 28 minutes, which is what he averaged, 8 field goal attempts, I just need him to hit 50%. He's shooting mostly around the rim. You can throw a 3 in there from the corner or whatever, but I think 7 points is going to be a fine number for him to come by right now, and this should be closer to 9.5, 10.5 points. So. But that is all the time we have for you in Play a Props. As mentioned, we also got the best bets video with 4 extra plays in there for you guys. So make sure you subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along all season with us. Until we see you next, happy betting.